The case of the vanishing artist. It began as a missing person report that no one took seriously. A young artist, known for her eccentricity and erratic schedule, hadn't been seen in over a week. Her friends assumed she'd gone off grid again, chasing inspiration somewhere along the Cornish coast. But by the time the police realized something was wrong, Emily Shaw had already vanished, without a trace. Emily was 28 years old, living in Bristol's Stokes Croft, a neighbourhood of paint-splattered studios and coffee shops filled with people who called themselves creatives. She was talented, unpredictable, and sometimes difficult. Her art was a mix of realism and surreal imagery, vivid portraits of faces dissolving into landscapes, hands reaching out from fog, eyes hidden behind fractured glass. Locals said her work made you feel watched. Her last known exhibition, called Still Life, Still Death, opened on the first Friday of March. It drew attention for all the wrong reasons. Halfway through the evening, Emily argued loudly with a man near the back of the gallery. CCTV showed him leaving minutes later, slamming the door. No one knew who he was. 3 days later, Emily disappeared. At first, no alarm bells rang. Her landlord thought she'd gone travelling. Her friends said she'd often switch her phone off for days to paint in isolation. It wasn't until her mother, Margaret, drove down from Leeds and found Emily's flat unlocked that anyone called the police. Inside, nothing appeared stolen. Her purse was there, along with her laptop, passport, and sketchbooks. But her phone and keys were missing. One painting, however, had been removed from its frame, leaving behind a blank rectangle on the wall. Margaret noticed the faint outline of fingerprints on the glass, and something else. A handwritten note on the table that read simply, "He finally saw me." Detective Sergeant Rachel Hunt led the inquiry. She'd handled her share of missing person cases, most of which ended in quiet relief or grim discovery. But this one felt different. The details were oddly theatrical, almost staged. Forensic teams swept the flat, but found no trace of blood, no sign of forced entry, and no evidence of struggle. However, a neighbour recalled hearing what sounded like muffled shouting late Sunday night, followed by the dragging of something heavy down the stairs. Police appealed for witnesses and released a timeline. CCTV showed Emily buying art supplies at a shop in Bedminster around 5 p.m. on Sunday, then walking towards her studio on City Road. That was the last confirmed sighting. By midweek, media coverage exploded. "Mystery of the Vanishing Artist" read the headlines. Online forums dissected every frame of her artwork, claiming she had predicted her own disappearance. One painting in particular drew attention, a self-portrait titled "Under Observation." It showed Emily standing before a mirror, but her reflection was replaced by a dark silhouette holding a camera. Then, a week into the investigation, a member of the public made a chilling discovery. At the edge of the River Avon, near the Clifton Suspension Bridge, someone found a wooden easel, half submerged in mud. Taped to it was a small canvas, protected by a plastic sleeve. It was another painting by Emily, clearly recent. It depicted a woman's hand reaching out of dark water. At the bottom, written in pencil, were the words. Not yet. Detectives treated the find as a message, possibly left by Emily herself. But it was impossible to tell whether it was a cry for help or a taunt from whoever had taken her. Forensic analysis showed traces of Emily's fingerprints on the canvas, but also partial prints from an unidentified male. The police released a composite sketch based on the CCTV from her exhibition. The man she'd argued with, tall, mid-30s, dark hair, wearing a corduroy jacket. Within days, tips began flooding in. One call stood out. A gallery assistant from Bath claimed the man resembled Adrian Walsh, a reclusive art critic who'd recently published an anonymous blog series reviewing local artists, including Emily. His reviews were strange, half praise, half obsession. In one entry, he'd written, "Some artists paint what they see. Emily Shaw paints what she hides." When detectives traced Walsh's address, they found he'd moved out 3 weeks earlier. His landlord said he'd left behind only a storage unit key. Inside that unit, police found dozens of photographs of Emily, candid shots taken over months. She was unaware in most of them, leaving her flat, buying groceries, painting by a window, and in the corner of the storage room stood a large, unfinished canvas covered by a sheet. When officers lifted it, they found a portrait of Emily, lying motionless, eyes closed, surrounded by lilies. At the bottom was a signature, A.W. The discovery transformed the case from a missing person into a probable homicide. But even with overwhelming evidence of stalking, Adrian Walsh was nowhere to be found. Interpol issued a warrant. Months passed. Then, in late August, a breakthrough came from an unexpected place. A small gallery in Lisbon reported a man trying to sell a painting matching Emily's style, a piece titled The Silence Between. Staff said the man spoke fluent English, but used the name Andrew Wells. He'd left abruptly when asked for identification. Portuguese police recovered the painting and confirmed it was Emily's original, the one missing from her flat. On the back of the canvas, someone had written a message. She belongs to the art now. A week later, Adrian Walsh was arrested at a seaside hostel near Cascais. He had 2 passports, £9,000 in cash, and a notebook filled with sketches, all of Emily. During interrogation, he denied killing her. He claimed Emily had faked her disappearance as a performance piece, and that he'd merely helped her realize it. When pressed about the paintings, he said they were part of a collaborative project titled Vanishing, but investigators found inconsistencies in his timeline. Travel records showed he left the UK the morning after Emily vanished, and when forensic teams examined his belongings, they discovered fibers from Emily's rug embedded in his suitcase lining. With no body, prosecutors faced an uphill battle. The case went to trial in early 2024 at Bristol Crown Court. Attracting national attention, the tabloids called it the art murder without a body. The prosecution argued that Walsh had become obsessed, his admiration turning into fixation, then control. When Emily rejected him publicly at the exhibition, he snapped. They believed he killed her that night and disposed of her body in the river. Defense lawyers countered that there was no proof Emily was dead, only that she wanted to disappear. They pointed to her own artwork, her cryptic note, and her history of depressive episodes. Perhaps, they said, this was Emily's final masterpiece, the artist erasing herself. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. In the end, they returned a verdict of guilty of murder. Circumstantial, yes, but overwhelming. Adrian Walsh was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 30 years. Yet even after the conviction, one question lingered. Where was Emily Shaw? 6 months after the trial, a group of volunteers cleaning the River Avon made a grim discovery. Wedged beneath an old barge was a large wooden crate, sealed with rusted nails. Inside were the remains of a woman, wrapped carefully in a painter's dropcloth. Forensic examination confirmed it was Emily. Near her body lay a small paintbrush, and beneath it, a tag marked Exhibit A. Detectives later learned Walsh had studied art restoration, specializing in preservation techniques for organic materials. He had preserved her as if she were one of his pieces. The final forensic report concluded she'd died from blunt force trauma, likely during a struggle in her flat. He'd then transported her body to the river under the cover of night. After the discovery, Emily's mother released a statement. She wrote, "My daughter wanted to be remembered for her art. Now, tragically, she always will be." The gallery that first exhibited Emily's work reopened her show posthumously under a new title, Vanishing: The Life and Death of Emily Shaw. Proceeds from the exhibition went to a trust supporting women artists facing harassment and stalking. Detective Sergeant Hunt later reflected, "What haunted us most was that Emily left us clues in her art. We just didn't realize we were already looking at her goodbye." In the end, the case of the vanishing artist wasn't about mystery or illusion. It was about obsession, the kind that turns admiration into ownership and beauty into evidence. Emily's paintings remain on display at the Bristol Museum of Modern Art. Her final recovered piece, Under Observation, hangs in a quiet corner, eyes blacked out, staring at no one, and beneath it, a small plaque reads, "For Emily Shaw, who saw too much, too clearly."